So why the Nativity came to be after looking at Dr. Jeremiah's book, Why the Nativity, and knowing that Dr. Jeremiah always wanted to do a feature film for television. And so we felt that Christmas would be the perfect time to release something like that, something different, something that people would watch, not just one time, but possibly could be a tradition year after year. So we thought Why the Nativity would be that perfect vehicle. So we took the book, and Dr. Jeremiah is the host of this docudrama film, and the words pretty much come out of the book, but we created a larger storyline to encompass more of Christmas than probably what people have seen before.
One day I was sitting in my office, and one of our publishers called me. He was a friend of mine. He said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this book on Christmas, and what we want to do is take the key elements of Christmas and put them into short little chapters. We need 25 chapters, and we need them in 3 weeks." And I thought, you got to be kidding me. But you know, if you really get started and you believe in something, the good news was I'd preached on almost all of those. So it wasn't like going to research new material. It was taking things I'd already studied and finding ways to abridge them and put them in a chapter so that they would fit into this category. So we did 25 Why the Nativity chapters, and we made the deadline. It was amazing. For me as a pastor, I think Christmas is special because the message of the birth of Christ is the seed of the gospel. It's the good news. You know, Easter is fraught with the death of Christ, which is by itself is sad. The resurrection makes it glorious. But Christmas is totally positive in terms of the birth of a child, the coming of the Redeemer, people gathering from every walk of life to observe, the angels, the shepherds. There isn't a better story that you could ever tell.
To film a historical piece, you have to go someplace that looks like the time. So going back to the first century, and with the sets and the costumes and all that takes to film a first century piece, the scope got quite big, quite fast. But we knew that if we were going to do something that was memorable, we had to answer that call of doing something big. So with a little bit of thought and prayer, we just went after it.
We really had to look into various historical periods, cultures, people. Of course, we have the lead characters of Mary and Joseph and Jesus and Gabriel. And so this is such a well-known story, that is known all across the world, all around the world, that immediately I felt a little bit of a pressure to step up, to do my research, to also see how the story has been presented to people in the past, in the present, right? And then draw from that. I absolutely enjoy the direction of the director on this project, Paul, how he's approaching it. He was really interested in representing these people as real people. He wanted to bring color to the story. We spent quite a bit of time on talking about the color palette of the costumes. So that was really fascinating.
So we gathered a team of very talented people, and we began researching everything from history to the geography to what dwellings were like, what the mud was like in different areas, what was happening in the world. And we gathered all this information together. That was our vault of direction. And we hired a team, Design Build, who helped create and design this whole set. And we painstakingly laid it out so it would all work with all the different shots. We'd have a lot of variety in the set.
It was a set that was built for Turning Point, and it's one of a kind, the only one like it, and it's beautiful. And what I've liked about shooting here is that it's contained. You can shoot almost 360 degrees. Joe Cashman and his team just crushed it putting this place together. Travis, art department, props, they did a great job dressing it.
So in Why the Nativity, you see Bethlehem 4 different times. You see it at the decree, you see it at the birth of Christ months later, and then you see it when the kings show up, and then you see it many, many, many years later, 30 years later. So we have to show the same city 4 different times. So that means it has to look a little different each time. Now the construction of the buildings don't change, but props continually have to be recycled and removed and retired once they've been key. The census, there's lots of people here, so we added a lot. We make the town look crowded. The very first time we were in Bethlehem and the last time we're in Bethlehem, it's very sparse. There's hardly anyone in the streets. The props are a little more subdued. It takes a good plan to make the same city look a little different each time. It could be as simple as placing fires in different places or hanging the items from stores and markets in a different place. Some people may not notice it at all, but a lot of people would notice it. There is maybe a subconscious shift in your mind, like it looks a little bit different. I think it's super important. We've been working on this film for about 2.5 years. So we have employed, I think, over 1,500 people for this show in different areas of Southern California. We have had over 103 named characters on set. We have had background anywhere from 3 to 75, 80 in any given day. It has been a lot of different people on this backlot and in our locations, putting this whole piece together so it looks believable and it looks authentic.
Production's been super cool on this job. We've been able to get cranes, sliders, Steadicam full-time. We have dolly full-time. It's pretty amazing. Multiple cameras, 2 cameras for the whole run of the show. We had a 3rd camera for about 3 weeks of the show. So it's been put together really great. We're just kind of rocking. You can do a lot when you have all the tools and the personnel that know how to use the tools. And that's what Turning Point Studios has basically provided to make this film. Here's the thing, with locations, you know, there's different variables. You get to a location, it might be beautiful, but here are the factors. How hard is it to get equipment in there? And that kind of tells you right there, what are you actually gonna use for this? You may not be able to get a dolly in there, so maybe a Steadicam, or maybe it's just sticks and a slider. And then you gotta also factor in time of day, you know, because if you can't really light it up, hopefully that sun's gonna be backlight for you. And then after that, you know, we got very Western. We ended up in Thousand Oaks, up in the hills, and that was beautiful up there. A couple difficult spots, again, just how do you get equipment into the location? That was always an issue there. Not a major one, but you know, it kind of simplified things. But at the same time, we got some really beautiful stuff just because of that. For example, I wanted to bring a dolly down to this one location. And after scouting it the second time with the key grip, I looked at him and said, nah, this isn't gonna happen. Anyhow, one of my camera operators went handheld in there and we got some beautiful stuff. Not planning on doing it that way, but we just did it and it looked great.
There are many Christmas shows out there. So one of the questions we first had to ask ourselves, if we do a Christmas show, a Christmas film, why do another one? It's a familiar story. Everyone knows the plot line. Everyone knows what's going to happen in the end. So why do one? And that was a huge question we had to answer. We felt that we could put a little more creativity in the story. We could put a little bit more imagination into a story that's pretty down pat. I mean, not only do you see the story on television every year, but you see it at your church or in a Christmas play downtown, and it's the same cast of like 9 characters. We felt like we could add a lot more to the story, drop in a little bit of imagination, make it a little more provocative in the storyline so people would take a new look at Christmas. And that was the goal, was to say, let's take a look at Christmas again and not just present the same story, but a story that makes you stop and think a little broader about what it was to have Jesus born in Bethlehem. The very first thing that you see in our show is the Romans, is the decree. And the Romans continually are there throughout the show to show you there's a tension. There's a little bit of our antagonists that show that they're there, they're watching, they're concerned. And it also is a little bit of setting the stage for what will happen 33 years later when Jesus is crucified. It's always a presence in their life. We think that the Romans showed up when Jesus was crucified. They were present in his life from the time he was born to the time he died. They were always around. They were always there, just looming, waiting to take advantage. So I think that is very important for us to show that there is always trouble, there is always unrest, there's always something that we should be concerned about. But when the angel told the shepherds that he would bring peace on earth, he would be the Prince of Peace. So I think that's what we want to do with that tension of the Romans always being around, always watching, and realizing that we are to rise above that. There's one scene when Jesus walks through the town and he doesn't acknowledge the Romans because it doesn't bother him. It bothers everyone else, but not him because he's overcome all of that. So in creating a creative package to house Mary and Joseph and the shepherds and the kings, we decided to put in characters that, though we don't know them by name, we know that people like these characters would be there. So we have children, we have the kings and families, we have neighbors. We even see characters that we'll actually get to know in Jesus' life as kids early. The idea of nuanced characters came to make people stop and think again that this is not a story they already know, but maybe this is a story they should think of, take a second look at. Anytime you have a nuance, that means it's something a little different than what is already planned or stated. And I think a lot of storytelling is adding specific nuances to a story that make you stop and think, I never thought about that. That's possibly the way it went. What would I do in that situation? So our nuanced characters were created to drop in those moments. So you wouldn't just say, oh yeah, Mary and Joseph. Oh yeah, the baby, the shepherds. But to stop and experience Christmas yourself for the first time through the eyes and lives of these nuanced characters. But we also added a lot of nuanced moments that are foreshadowing of what Jesus would have in his life. I can think of a few, like when Mary first comes to Bethlehem, she's sitting at the well waiting for her husband to find a place for them to stay. And as she's sitting there observing the whole town, she notices a blacksmith who's really tough and mean and angry. And in our story, he represents the people who are not welcoming. And he's sitting there in his blacksmith shop working, and what he's doing, he's making nails. And they're not small nails, they're large nails. And as he's making them, he's tossing them and throwing them to the ground. And he looks up at Mary, and she looks back at him, and he throws his last nail, which is the third nail. And so in that moment, it's a nuanced moment that we don't know there was a blacksmith that had an encounter with Mary in the square, but we put that in because when she sees those three nails on the ground, it's a little foreshadowing of things that are going to come in the life of her son. There are sprinkled throughout the show, there are a lot of nuanced moments of symbols and a white horse, flowers, swaddling clothes that are all premonitions of what will happen in the future life of Jesus. Sometimes when you tell a story, the flashing forward or flashing back really helps set the details. And it also makes a story go from just one facet to many faceted aspects of the story. So in Why the Nativity, I decided to drop in foreshadowing of Jesus' life from the baby to seeing himself years later. There's some characters that we see in this show that end up later in Jesus' life, as I mentioned. But the dream sequences and the foreshadowing of things to come in a dream or a vision happen a lot to tie the larger gospel story in of Jesus as a baby, but wouldn't it be nice to understand why Jesus was born? So in that manger scene, we see Jesus have a flash forward of what his life will be, and we see the work of Jesus in healing the sick and welcoming the children and forgiving a woman and even dying on the cross. We don't want to miss that part of why the baby came. So those were put in to say, just a reminder, it's not just about this moment, it's about the start of his whole life. This is the moment that starts what he's about to do. This is the beginning of his mission, not the end of his mission. There was a little bit of concern that we would overshadow the true story, and we have tried not to do that. We've also tried to make all these characters accurate to the time and not add anything that is far beyond, what we could expect. One of the newest characters that was a stretch for me before we researched them was all the different kings and their family. We found out through research and history that kings would never travel by themselves, especially if it's a 2-year, 3-year journey, because they'd be robbed. They would want their families with them. So in this research, we found out that people did take their families, and people did take guards with them. They were in it for a long trip. So in our show, though you've probably never seen kings show up with their whole families, you'll see that in ours. So it's a stretch of what you've seen before, but historically, it's actually probably what truly happened when people would travel. They would take their life and travel with it.
Probably the most fascinating aspect of the direction that we received was for the three wise men, the kings from the East. That to me was incredibly exciting to research. As a costume designer, we're always concerned with historical accuracy. Now, because of the time period, there are very few visual references that we could actually go off. So, of course, we looked at the various empires that existed, and we're talking about anywhere from, 2nd, 1st century BC all the way to 1st, 2nd century AD. But we looked into the Roman Empire as well as the Persian Empire, some of the ancient dynasties of China. And because the director of the project wanted the three kings to be represented in a little bit different way, he was interested in looking into one of the kings to be from China, and we specifically looked into the Han Dynasty, which is an ancient historical period of Chinese history. So there were quite a bit of information, actually. I was surprised myself of how many visual references we had from the period. Also, what was special is that we were not only seeing the kings, the three kings, but we also saw their families. And so for each king, we have actually a royal entourage. And the entourage included the king, the wife, the children of the king, as well as servants, guardsmen, horsemen, cameleers, really a big group of people. And we see them in three various scenes. We see them in their own homes, when they travel, and also at the end at Bethlehem, when they meet the child Jesus. And so that was really a big portion of the research that we did, is to research into the three kings. So in addition to the Chinese king from the Han Dynasty, we also looked at, there's a character that is named King Rashan, and he's from the Persian Empire. So we definitely looked at historical research from the Persian Empire. And then the third king is King Kamari, who comes to us from Africa, and actually more specifically from Central Africa, the Serengeti region. It kind of covers present-day Kenya, a little bit of Ethiopia, Congo. So that was really fascinating to look into ancient cultures from that continent as well.
So there's a point in this story where three kings from different geographical locations, from Asia, the Middle East, Africa, we're using instrumentation for each of these groups and their entourage. But when they actually journey to Bethlehem, I've written a theme that is sort of a combination of all three of these locations. So it's kind of a unifying theme, and I've used all the instruments melded them all together into sort of a melting pot. So it's not particularly one thing or the other. Most people in general, when they're watching a film, the music isn't even apparent to them. And that's probably a good thing. It's when the music is too apparent, when it's probably not doing its job. It's amazing what music brings to a film when it comes to enhancing emotion. I love writing music to picture. I love the emotion it brings, the subtlety, the interesting way it bends the picture. I was attracted to this project, Why the Nativity, mostly because of the story. It's an epic story. It musically covers every style I can think of, from grandiose to magical to tender. It's a love story between Mary and Joseph, between God and his people. There's so much substance to it, and musically, it's a treat to work on because of that. When it comes to the project, Why the Nativity, I think that music is super important, partly because of the docudrama format that it's in. Part of the reason why this project is so attractive to me and why I took it was I really enjoy being involved on a spiritual level as well as a musical level with the project. So my daily work is a little bit like church. It's a little sort of my way of connecting emotionally with my Creator, and those themes need to be emotional. They need to have impact. They need to be strong enough to be developed throughout the show, to give the characters a sense of who they are, to give a sense of place to where we are, to give importance that it deserves, because the story deserves importance.
So in creating Why the Nativity, we really wanted to have some themes that the world today could relate to. So love, young love, mission, calling, grace. So we have some themes throughout this show. We think of Mary and Joseph as kids. In Dr. Jeremiah's writings, he brings out that Mary and Joseph were raised in the same little town of Nazareth, so they would know each other as kids. So we see them as kids running through town.
We got this crane, it's called a Chapman Zeus. It was built in the 1950s, and it's a classic. We got to talk, and we knew we wanted something out here in the back lot that could be fast to get high-angle shots. That came up. Turns out they have a Steadicam platform for it. We found that out, and then instantly it's like, hey, we should try some Steadicam walk-offs. So day one, we got the crane, and guess what? Steadicam walk-off. We sent our operator up. He did a nice walk-off right into Nazareth, following young Mary and Joseph down the street. It was pretty epic.
To be able to be here and portraying somebody who's not really talked about a lot, and so like even in the Bible, like he's in a couple of verses, right? But you know he's a huge influence on just the upbringing of Jesus, you know, and the impact he must have had just like being a carpenter and having like I don't know, just like being a father figure up close and personal in the physical world while his father in heaven was looking down. It just feels like an honor because I know that Mary and just I don't know, their journey and their story is pretty special. So to be able to play that and bring their stories to life and like show who they were as humans, as like Paul talks about their relationship and their love as they grew, and then having all this happen and seeing something that the Bible doesn't really touch on. It's our creative freedom to kind of explore culturally and historically true, but something that is really fun for the audience to dive into and be like, wow, this is what that could have looked like, and this is what that could have felt like. But also, coming from Joseph's perspective, I don't know, initially when I read the Bible, I saw him as just like, okay, yeah, I get to be a part of God's plan, you know, and I just get to dive on in and be like, wow, I got chosen for this. But like, this is his girlfriend, this is his soon-to-be wife, and then hearing that your wife is pregnant, and it's like somebody that you've been planning for and then like going after, and you get to see now more of like his journey through that and maturing through that and seeing how he dealt with it. And I don't know, like I've really fallen in love with his character more through that, seeing how patient he is and how kind, and also just that level of surrender of your plans to God and what he has in store.
We want them to be kids who are excited about what their life is together. So we have that love. We want the youth to understand that that could have been them. We want teenagers today and young people today to say, that could be me. You know, that's how I feel about the person I love, the person I'm going to marry. But also love is about, well, what if God called you to do something that was pretty crazy and out of the box? Would you still love God? Would you still follow your mission? Would you still have purpose? So that's a theme, is taking these people who are so in love and so excited about what they have in the future, and all of a sudden everything's turned upside down, and now their life has changed, and they've had a message from God. This is what I want you to do. Will they do it? The bigger question is, would we do it? You know, would you or I do that if God said, hey, I'm going to ask you to do something that's totally crazy, but this is what I want you to do. Will we do that? So that's the theme. And kings traveling across the world to see a newborn king is a mission. Like, I want to see the Messiah. The shepherds who represent in our story, the first followers of Christ, they take a risk by coming to this city when they're not allowed in the city, even a little persecution, so they can get to the manger. So these themes are throughout, which is love and mission and purpose, those come through in a lot of different characters and a lot of different storylines, but mainly through Mary and Joseph. There's a scene we have, actually, it's right out here behind us, and it's when all the kings have come in and they've already seen the young Jesus and they've presented their gifts. And then we pick them up later at night, and they're all in the square. There's tables all around, they're sharing food, they're getting to know each other, and all these different nations, Africa and China and Persia and the Jewish people, they're all intermixed, and they're all enjoying each other's company and trying to explain their journey to each other in the languages they really don't understand. And young Jesus is playing with a young African prince and a young Chinese princess, and they're running through the streets. And to me, that is one of my favorite moments in the show because, the Bible says, for God so loved the world. And I think sometimes we forget about that. We think Christmas and God is all about me, and it's not. It's really about the world. And I think in that scene, it pictures the true reason why Jesus came. It was for everybody, no matter who you are, no matter where in this world you originate from. God, Jesus came for you, and it is something that's a gift for you. And I love that moment in the show. I've never seen that in any Christmas show before, where we actually pull in the international world in one big picture and really set that stage for John 3:16.
We shot a shot, it was a Steadicam shot in Riff Raff Row. And again, it was a oneer, basically. We followed Joseph in all through Riff Raff Row, and Paul had him do this beautiful choreography where he spins around and our camera just captures it just right. It was just a big oneer. It was probably my favorite shot. This was a scene where Joseph, he left Mary at a well. He was looking for lodging for him and Mary because Mary's getting ready to give birth. So Joseph's exploring Bethlehem, and he ends up in Riff Raff Row, which is kind of the shady part of town here. He kind of enters, he loops around and kind of exits at the same time. But it was probably like a 20-second take, and we just followed him with a Steadicam, and it was just beautiful. Logan, our actor who played Joseph, did a beautiful job with it, and Jeff Ball, our camera operator on that, he just nailed the shot. So it was quite amazing. I like to use Steadicam when people are in travel, and sometimes I just like to hang out behind them or on the side of them. We've kind of shot it all over, but I mean, there's always tools to use. Sometimes, like if scenes are a little more exciting, we go handheld to add a little more motion to it. If it's just like something beautiful and peaceful, we might just lock it off or just slow push-ins just to add that little bit of emotion. Some of my favorite shots, though, are when you can line up a shot and get, if you can get your wide, land in a medium, pull back out, and then even push in again. As many frame sizes you can get in one shot, I think that's true cinema, and that's part of the art if you can line those up just right. We shot a large scene in Bethlehem, and I used some tight lenses, but I used a lot of wide lenses too. And that might have been our biggest scene, see most of the world in our Bethlehem. We made a decision to use telephoto lenses to compress the world and make it seem larger. Also, the set was made to film so many different ways. It looks beautiful low looking up, and vice versa, high looking down. One scene that sticks out to me, it's in Mary's bedroom when Gabriel visits her for the first time. We set up a dolly in there, and again, it was a close-up on some flowers, cruise across to a medium shot, keep pulling, push in, and we had a slider on the dolly, and then slid in for a close-up on the ends that gave us that third axis. Again, that was a beautiful scene. And the lighting, it was beautiful. We had atmosphere in there. That's gonna be another one that scene's gonna look great. Working with Dwight Campbell's been a real pleasure. He comes from the old school, he's been around a long time, has a great career. It's been an honor to work with him. He's made my life very simple. I was talking the other day and I was complimenting how he's, instead of, sometimes we point the camera and that's what's being lit. Dwight understands that we're probably gonna look a lot more when we go in for coverage, look all over the place, and he knows that, so he pre-lights basically almost everything. So you can turn around and you're gonna be lit at least 180 degrees, if not 270 degrees. And I think that's pretty impressive, I mean, I remember right in the beginning of the shoot, I was like, hey, Dwight, you think we could do this? And he looked at me, he's like, just frame up. And I appreciate that. And that's why I was like, all right, I know how we're going to roll here. Cool. But that gives me the ability to just work with Paul one-on-one, get the coverage for Paul that we need to get, and trusting Dwight to, set the lamps and light it and get us to the exposures we need to be. But he's been super cool. He's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot from him. When I can shoot stuff and he looks at me and says, hey man, that looked pretty good, that makes me feel good. Again, the guy, he lit the abyss. He's done a lot more than that, So I respect that. I came from an age where you respect your elders, you respect, I worked for a lot of older gaffers that I respect. Those guys are knowledgeable. I'm kind of come from a new age too. We're all LED dim and stuff. Dwight's, I like his style. He keeps it real with his Fresnels. He's old school. He likes stuff that can send it. He lights just right. He doesn't overlight it. He keeps it a little dim, keeps it right where we need to be. I think that's a lot of our look is due to Dwight. And then also Kevin Guild, on the grip side, bringing his team in to, camera support as far as just, backing Dwight with, cutting lights and shaping it. Paul's been amazing. Back in our pre-pro, we would sit there. I'd sit in his office for hours, like 3 hours at a time, once to twice a week, just talking about script, talking about just whatever, primarily the film, but we go on tangents about different things. And he is so creative and such a kind person. And what I really noticed about him, is the micro scale of creativity. He knows how to work with
We could have had it all, rolling it in the deep. You had my heart inside in your hand and you played it to the beat. Even if I have nothing, oh, haters hate cause I've got it all. Lovers love even when I fall. Haters hate cause I stand tall. Love me, hate me, support or berate me, I don't care, it's all the same. Cause I've climbed so many peaks, it's all become a game. Even if I have nothing at all, haters hate cause I got it all. Lovers love even when I fall. Haters hate cause I stand tall. Love me, hate me, support or berate me, I don't care, it's all the same. Cause I've climbed so many peaks, it's all become a game. Blah, blah, blah. This beat can be polite if need be, but now I'm unleashing my artillery. Instead, no, I've been holding back, you see. Sacrifice myself, let others be free. Haters gonna hate, it's your new title. Before me you bow, don't try to rival. Don't compare yourself, I'm wrong, surpass you for years, for seasons, for weeks. It's true, oh no, cutting karma cycle. Your world's motive's no longer viable. Two-faced, you act nice to my face. Behind my back, you're a disgrace. Your thoughts pitiful and frightening. Tasted success, now you're enlightening. Think you're a god after dessert. Sorry, I'm not that naive or hurt. I know what's fake and what's real. Could have had it all, rolling it in the deep. You had my heart inside in your hand and you played it to the beat. We could have had it all, rolling it in the deep. You had my heart inside in your hand and you played it to the beat. My name is not Nashi, action show my drive, but for no problem can't survive. On the first place trophy I left my mark. I got the work, I got the money, I got the respect, I got reborn. Breathing air, feeling gravity's pull. Nothing matters but moving forward, that's my rule. Proving myself again and again. This victory is truly mine to attain. Where will I live? In your eyes. Watch closely as another storm will rise. I won't accept anyone's disdain. No way, okay, nothing can explain how hard I've worked for this success. No way, okay, every drop of sweat is for progress. Persistent, you get a mix of struggle and regret. Shining like with me, another night on big success leads the way. We could have had it all, rolling it in the deep. You had my heart inside in your hand and you played it to the beat. We could have had it all, rolling it in the deep. You had my heart inside in your hand and you played it to the beat.
Get lost in my mistakes. Can't think of anything better. There'd be a way to stop reliving thing that can't be changed. Forget what's once and reset. Memories can be the only part of me that be changed. Just let me be free. Just let me be free. Joy flies fly by, don't mean name. tonight. Just let me be free. Just let me be free. Times when I should have talked, moments when I should have walked, fights where I could have been braver, times when I could have been a savior.